Hollywood has given us some incredible child actors over the years, but for every heartwarming role, there are others that make you wonder, how did this even get approved? Some kids were put in roles way too dark for their age, while others were thrown into movies with themes they couldn't possibly understand. And let's not even talk about the scripts filled with adult jokes that no child should ever have to say. The worst part is that many of these kids had no idea what they were getting into. Join us as we look at the 10 worst roles ever given to child actors, starting with Linda Blair in The Exorcist, 1973. When The Exorcist hit theaters in 1973, it terrified audiences like never before. But for 14-year-old Linda Blair, the horror wasn't just on screen. It followed her in real life. Playing Regan MacNeil, a 12-year-old girl possessed by a demon, made her an instant star. But it also put her in one of the most disturbing roles ever given to a child. Blair had to act out terrifying scenes, including one where Regan violently uses a crucifix in an inappropriate way. The role pushed boundaries, leaving many questioning if Hollywood had gone too far. Despite the controversy, her performance was unforgettable. She won a Golden Globe Award and even earned an Academy Award nomination for the role. But fame came at a price. The film was so shocking that Blair received death threats, and security had to protect her for months. She reprised her role in Exorcist II: The Heretic, 1977, though the sequel didn't reach the same success. Then, 50 years later, she was asked to return for The Exorcist: Believer, 2023. At first, she wanted nothing to do with it. "They all knew I wanted nothing to do with it," she admitted. But when the filmmakers asked for her blessing, she gave it. Fans were disappointed when they heard she wouldn't appear in the movie, but Blair had other priorities, her Animal Rescue Foundation. Still, she later agreed to help the young actresses in the film. She wanted to ensure they were okay, given the intense nature of their roles. Eventually, she made a cameo herself, which director David Gordon Green called a beautiful moment. For Blair, it wasn't just about revisiting her past. It was about using her platform to support something close to her heart. "I'm hoping that people understand I did the film to ask for help, for those that need help," she said. Chloe Grace Moretz in Kick-Ass, 2010. Playing a child superhero sounds exciting, but Kick-Ass took things to a whole new level. Chloe Grace Moretz was only 12 years old when she played Mindy McCready, better known as Hit Girl. Unlike most kid heroes, she wasn't just fighting bad guys. She was brutally killing them. The movie was filled with graphic violence, and Moretz's character was at the center of it all. From the very first scene, it was clear that Hit Girl was no ordinary child. She used guns, swords, and knives, taking down grown men in violent fight sequences. But it wasn't just the action that made her role controversial. It was her language. She cursed like an adult, delivering harsh insults with confidence. The mix of violence and profanity made people question whether such a young actress should have been given this role. Despite the controversy, Moretz gave an incredible performance. She brought humor, charm, and intensity to the character, making Hit Girl one of the most memorable parts of the film. But many critics felt uncomfortable watching a child act in such an extreme and mature role. Some argued that it glorified violence, while others thought it blurred the line between entertainment and exploitation. Moretz later admitted she didn't fully understand the impact of the role when she took it. As she got older, she realized how much of a shock factor Hit Girl had. While Kick-Ass was meant to be fun and over the top, it left people debating whether a child should ever be put in a role like this. Brooke Shields in Pretty Baby, 1978. Brooke Shields was just 11 years old when she starred in Pretty Baby, a film that shocked audiences and sparked controversy. In the movie, she played a child prostitute, which was a role that many believed was inappropriate for someone so young. But Shields saw it differently. She called it the only artistic film she had ever done, praising the level of detail, from the costumes to the cinematography. She felt that Pretty Baby was more than just a movie. It was art. One of the most talked about moments was her first on-screen kiss with Keith Carradine, an adult actor. Shields had never kissed a boy before and felt awkward about it. She remembered scrunching up her face, not knowing what to do. The film's director, Louis Malle, kept telling her, "Don't pull away, don't pull away." At the time, she didn't even think about the age difference. But Carradine, who was much older, was understanding. He reassured her by saying, "This doesn't count." That small gesture stuck with her for life. Even though Pretty Baby was controversial, Shields never felt unsafe on set. But other films were a different story. While filming Endless Love, 1981, director Franco Zeffirelli did something strange. He pinched her toes to force a certain reaction. Shields thought to herself, "How about directing? Here's an idea." Another time, a coach told her to imagine someone stabbing her horse to make her cry. But it didn't work. "If someone stabbed my horse, I wouldn't cry. I would stab the person who stabbed my horse," she said. She realized how little effort directors put into understanding her. Even now, she wonders if her films could have been better if directors had spent more time guiding her instead of just using her looks. Kirsten Dunst in Interview with the Vampire, 1994. Kirsten Dunst was just 11 years old when she played Claudia, a child vampire trapped in a young girl's body. The role was complex and disturbing. Claudia looked like a child, but inside she was an adult. She longed for love, passion, and freedom, which were things she could never have because she would always be seen as a little girl. Her frustration grew into anger, and that made her dangerous. The film wasn't just about emotions. It was filled with bloody violence, and Claudia played a big part in it. She didn't just drink blood, she killed. Despite her small size, she was one of the most terrifying characters in the movie. Dunst had to bring both innocence and pure evil to the role, and she delivered perfectly. She made Claudia both tragic and terrifying at the same time. Playing such a role at a young age wasn't easy. Dunst had to act alongside big Hollywood stars like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, but she stole the show. Even though she was just a kid, her performance was unforgettable. Looking back, she later admitted that some scenes, like having to kiss Brad Pitt, made her uncomfortable. But at the time, she was too young to fully understand the weight of her role. And so Claudia was one of the most disturbing child roles in Hollywood history. The character was trapped in a world where she could never grow up, never change, and never escape. Dunst's performance made the audience feel both sympathy and fear, proving that even at a young age she had serious talent. The entire cast of Kids, 1995. When Kids hit theaters in 1995, it was impossible to ignore. Directed by Larry Clark and written by Harmony Korine, the film didn't feel like fiction. It felt too real. Instead of casting trained actors, Clark chose real teenagers from New York City, kids with no acting experience. This decision made the movie raw and authentic, but it also made it extremely controversial. The film followed a group of teens engaging in reckless and dangerous behavior which included underage sex, drugs, alcohol, and violence, all without consequences. It showed the darkest sides of teenage life, and it didn't hold back. Some called it a brutal wake-up call, while others thought it went too far. The biggest criticism, however, was the way Clark filmed these young actors, with many feeling he sexualized minors in a way that crossed the line. Despite the controversy, the cast delivered unforgettable performances. Leo Fitzpatrick, Rosario Dawson, and Chloe Sevigny all made their debuts in Kids, and their careers took off. But for some, life after the film wasn't as bright. Justin Pierce, who played Casper, struggled with personal demons. In 2000, he tragically died by suicide, leaving behind a haunting reminder of how kids blurred the line between acting and reality. Some critics saw the film as a warning about teenage recklessness, while others viewed it as exploitation disguised as art. Either way, Kids became one of the most controversial films of its time, sparking debates about how far Hollywood should go when portraying real-life struggles on screen. Sue Lyon and Dominique Swain in Lolita, 1962-1997. Speaking of controversial, few roles in Hollywood are as controversial as Lolita. Based on Vladimir Nabokov's 1955 novel, the story follows a middle-aged man's obsession with a teenage girl. It has been adapted into film multiple times, but the two most famous versions cast actual teenagers in the lead role, Sue Lyon in 1962 and Dominique Swain in 1997. Both performances were powerful, but the role itself was deeply unsettling. In Stanley Kubrick's 1962 version, Sue Lyon played Lolita with a mix of innocence and flirtation, which made audiences uncomfortable. Even though the film was toned down compared to the book, it still pushed boundaries. Lyon was only 14 years old, yet she had to act in scenes that suggested a disturbing relationship with an older man. Critics praised her performance, but the film raised questions. Should a teenager ever play a role like this? Fast forward to 1997, and the remake starring Dominique Swain took things even further. Unlike Kubrick's version, this adaptation didn't hold back. Swain was just 15 years old, and her portrayal of Lolita was even more unsettling. The film was darker, more intense, and much closer to the book's disturbing themes. Swain's performance was praised, but many felt it was too much for a young actress to handle. Both versions of Lolita remain controversial. Some see them as artistic adaptations, while others believe they exploited real teenagers. Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver, 1976. Jodie Foster was just 12 years old when she played Iris, a teenage prostitute in Taxi Driver. The film, directed by Martin Scorsese, became a classic, but Foster's role was one of the most controversial child performances in Hollywood history. She was thrown into a dark and unsettling world, playing a character caught in disturbing situations. Even though her acting was praised, many questioned whether such a young girl should have been cast in such a mature role. Foster later admitted that no one knew how to direct her. The adults on set felt uncomfortable with her role and weren't sure how to handle certain scenes. She recalled that Scorsese would sometimes laugh nervously and then pass her off to Robert De Niro. But De Niro, known for his intense and quiet personality, wasn't much better at guiding her. Foster once joked, he was even more Robert De Niro then, even quieter and more strange. To prepare her for the role, Foster had to undergo a psychological test to make sure she could handle the film's disturbing themes. But even with preparation, the experience was unsettling. She was part of the film's violent final shootout, which added another layer of intensity to an already tough role. Despite everything, Foster held her own. She delivered a powerful and mature performance, proving her talent at a young age. Years later, she reflected on how strange it was to play Iris. She admitted that some moments were deeply uncomfortable, not just for her, but for everyone on set. While Taxi Driver became an iconic film, Foster's role remains one of the most controversial child performances in movie history. Tatum O'Neal in Paper Moon, 1973. Tatum O'Neal was just 8 years old when she played Addie Loggins in Paper Moon, a role that would make history. She had no acting experience, yet she delivered a performance so powerful that she won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, becoming the youngest person ever to do so. But behind the success, the role wasn't easy. The film, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, had a mature and layered story, filled with adult themes that were far from typical for a child actor. Paper Moon followed Addie, a tough and street-smart girl who ends up traveling with Moses Prey, a con artist played by her real-life father, Ryan O'Neal. Their relationship was complicated, sometimes funny, sometimes harsh, but always emotionally intense. Addie wasn't a typical sweet child character. She was rough around the edges, smoked cigarettes, and was often wiser than the adults around her. This made her stand out, but it also meant Tatum had to take on material far beyond her years. The film included violence, mild sexual themes, and deception, all seen through Addie's eyes. For an 8-year-old, playing such a role was a major challenge. While she received praise, her experience on set wasn't always pleasant. Working with her father wasn't easy, and their complicated real-life relationship added another layer of difficulty. Despite everything, Tatum's performance was unforgettable. She stole scenes, showing both toughness and vulnerability, making Addie feel real and relatable. But looking back, Paper Moon raised questions about how much responsibility should be placed on such a young actor. Winning an Oscar at 8 years old was an incredible achievement, but the role itself was far from child-friendly. Dakota Fanning in Hound Dog, 2007. Dakota Fanning was already a well-known child star when she took on the role of Llewellyn in Hound Dog. Audiences knew her as the sweet and innocent Fern from Charlotte's Web, so seeing her in such a dark and disturbing role was shocking. The film told the story of a young girl trapped in a cycle of abuse, neglect, and trauma. But what made Hound Dog truly controversial was a scene where Llewellyn is assaulted by an older boy. Even before the movie was released, it sparked outrage. Protesters argued that no child should be exposed to such mature and disturbing content. Many were concerned about how Fanning, who was barely a teenager at the time, would be affected by playing such a role. The film's defenders, however, claimed it was meant to be a powerful and emotional story, not exploitation. But critics were divided. Famed film critic Roger Ebert compared Fanning's performance to Jodie Foster's role in Taxi Driver, another film where a young actress played a controversial part. But that didn't stop the backlash. People were disturbed by how the character was sexualized, especially since Llewellyn suffers abuse at home and is shown in ways that made viewers deeply uncomfortable. The controversy hurt the film badly. It failed at the box office, making back only a fraction of its $3.5 million budget. Despite Fanning's strong performance, the film was overshadowed by criticism. Many felt it crossed a line, arguing that no child should ever have to act out such disturbing material. Others believed the film's message was lost in the outrage. While Fanning defended her role, insisting she was never in danger, the damage was done. Hound Dog became one of the most controversial child performances in Hollywood history, leaving audiences questioning where the line should be drawn in filmmaking. Heather O'Rourke in Poltergeist, 1982. Heather O'Rourke was just 6 years old when she starred as Carol Ann in Poltergeist. With her angelic face and haunting line, "They're here," she became one of the most memorable child actors in horror history. The movie followed a family haunted by evil spirits, with Carol Ann at the center of the terrifying events. But while the film became a classic, O'Rourke's story took a tragic turn. Filming Poltergeist wasn't easy for a child. She had to act in intense and frightening scenes, including moments where she was dragged by supernatural forces. The film's dark themes and eerie special effects made it a disturbing experience, even for adult actors. But O'Rourke handled it with professionalism beyond her years. She returned for Poltergeist II and Poltergeist III, making Carol Ann one of the most recognizable horror movie characters of all time. Behind the scenes, however, something strange and tragic was happening. The Poltergeist franchise became known for its so-called curse, as multiple actors from the films died unexpectedly. But the most heartbreaking loss was Heather O'Rourke herself. During the filming of Poltergeist III, she started suffering from health issues. At first, doctors misdiagnosed her with a common illness, but her condition worsened. In 1988, at just 12 years old, she passed away due to a misdiagnosed intestinal condition. Her sudden death shocked Hollywood, and many fans believed the Poltergeist films were cursed. The movie that made her a star also became part of one of Hollywood's most tragic stories. Even today, her role as Carol Ann remains haunting and unforgettable, but her real-life fate makes it even more heartbreaking. You see, Hollywood has given us some incredible child performances, but some roles have pushed the limits of what young actors should experience. Whether it's disturbing horror films, controversial storylines, or extreme emotional demands, these roles have sparked serious debates. While some performances became iconic, others left a lasting impact on the actors themselves. What do you think? Do you believe Hollywood should place stricter limits on child roles, or is it just part of storytelling? Which of these performances shocked you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more such stories.